What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar thus far, as we have very important data coming out for tomorrow. I'm also going to talk about some big earnings coming out, not to mention Joe Biden's speech later on for today, and all of this could end up affecting the markets for all these different tickers. But before I break into all this information, before I talk about the charts for Tesla, SPY, and etc., let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, when it comes to SPY, I just want to mention that this thing has this nice uptrend that's been established, and this thing has broken its all-time high, which is a very, very good sign. It's also trying to hold up above its all-time high. We got this little wick down all the way back down to this 513 area before it got bought back up, and we're still at this 515 area holding up very nicely. We also saw Tesla attempts to bounce a little bit, not to mention other tickers, while others are still very, very weak like Aapl. I want to break down what's happening with the charts in just a few minutes. Let's first go over what's happening for today and all this data. So today we had basically Jerome Powell giving a speech. He was in front of the Senate, and he didn't really say anything that was too crazy, too significant. The market still pumps nonetheless. He went on about talking about how the Fed has to just continue to monitor the situation, look at what data is necessary. And he did say that there is a lot of strength in the economy still. And yesterday he made a lot of claims about the recession, saying that the Fed is not really forecasting it as of right now, but that could change. So for now, positive stuff have come out and the market's been pumping. On top of this, we had more things that helped the market pump despite the technicals we got yesterday. I believe it's because of this. Joe Biden's going to be giving his State of the Union speech, and this is super important. Now, generally, when you have big events like this in politics, sometimes the markets could make certain moves. And in this case, it looks like the markets may have pumped approaching this speech, which is a pretty fun to trade, if anything, very, very fun to watch. So when is Biden going to be giving his speech? It's going to be today on Capitol Hill at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just a couple of hours away from right now, so not too far into the future. He's going to be giving his big speech, and this is going to be very important. We'll see if this helps the market or not, but as of right now, the market's been holding up quite well. Now, what else is going to affect the markets big time is going to be the data coming out for tomorrow being Friday, March 8th, 2024. So 1 hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a lot of data coming out. We have the non-farm payrolls data coming out. We have the unemployment numbers, especially the unemployment rate is going to be very, very important for the month of February. We're expecting 3.7%. If it's too hot, the market may not like this. If it's a little bit, if it's close to expectations or maybe like even lower, the market may still like that because it really fuels the soft landing narrative that Jerome Powell has been talking about. Now, I know the data is not fully trustworthy. This data could easily be manipulated and many things like that could be happening. So I'm not trying to say that all this data is objectively true. I'm simply just trying to report what the data is showing us, which is still going to affect the markets, and the market moves based off of it. That's the reason why you have to look at this data, kind of accept these numbers for what they are, even though we know they could be easily manipulated and not always true. But we do this just because of how it affects the markets, and we just want to be unbiased. Now, on top of this, we have government payrolls, manufacturing payrolls, non-farm payrolls, and all this data coming out. So we'll see how things end up looking. But the most important piece of data tomorrow is going to be the unemployment rate at 8:30 a.m. After that, there's pretty much nothing else coming out for the rest of the day. Everything else is very minor. But that's what we're getting for Friday. We'll see how things go. For earnings that just came out, I just want to mention that we had Broadcom and Costco announce their earnings. For tomorrow, we have America's Cartmart, which is very minor, nothing too crazy. But for these two that just came out, we have Costco right now. They didn't have the strongest of earnings, pretty good overall, but some things were missed. So looking at their EPS and revenue, their EPS was about $3.92. That beats expectations. But the revenue was $58 billion. This is a little bit below expectations, not the best of things out there. Despite this, their net income rose quite a bit, and their e-commerce sales were doing very, very well with good growth that was projected. I would say it was decent growth. So decent growth. They also increased their warehouses and have more plans to do so. It has clubs in many other countries, and they're going to be increasing their clubs a little bit more in China and also a few more in the US. So digital growth is improving. Digital growth, is still doing relatively well, and guidance has been pretty good. Nothing like out of the park, out of the water. But let me just say, because they missed on revenue, this was not the best of things. And despite that, Costco is still down just a little bit. So Earnings were not that bad. They weren't horrible, but they did miss on revenue. Besides that, everything else was quite decent. Broadcom is kind of flat right now, so earnings overall were quite decent. Their EPS was actually a beat at $10.99, and that's adjusted. Their net revenue was about 11.96 billion, beating the 11.76 billion expectation. However, the revenue for the Semiconductor Solutions Group ended up falling short of expectations. And for their 2024 guidance, was pretty decent overall with lots of AI growth potential. So because of AI is attached to it, this is still not doing as bad. But I do want to note that the share price is still down because certain sectors were not doing as well. So we're still, seeing something very similar to that of costs going away, where like some sectors did very well, others were not as great, and share prices still dropped despite that. Now for SPY, I was trying to find this on Chart Exchange. I couldn't really find it. So I'm going to be using this website instead. Sorry that the numbers are kind of small, but this is important because tomorrow is going to be March 8th, right? For Friday, you can see right here, once again, I apologize for these being very small, but the put to call ratio for tomorrow is 2.64. We have over 1.1 million puts expiring and about 417,000 calls expiring for tomorrow. The majority of people have puts. Many people are betting the market's going to sink. And because of that, there's a very good chance the market might not sink as hard if we end up getting what we're looking for. So we'll see how things go. I do want to note that, however, I'm not really a fortune teller, so I don't know what the unemployment numbers will give us. That's why I want to be very open minded, very adaptive to what the market may do for tomorrow. But nonetheless, there are some charts giving us hints about tomorrow. I want to talk about those as well. So for SPY, as of right now, this thing is holding up very well. I'm going to be honest with you. It's holding up very, very well, holding its support on a very, very nice uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows. And with Joe Biden's speech, right, this is still pushing. It's still holding up. Now, if you look at this from an Elliott wave perspective, you use this. We had wave one, wave two. This is like the bigger wave three. We came down. So this does suggest there could be one more push coming as a real possibility before this thing does end up turning back down. But for confirmation of this, although that is a possibility, watch resistance at 515. We first have to break that again since we're technically below that right now. Then 515.8 to 516. If we break past 516, we're going to soar up to about 517.25, and we'll see if we get a rejection around there. But there is potential for us to get that push. If we're bearish, you want to see this thing basically lose 513.5, which is where we bounced off today. If we lose that, 512 is coming. Now, let me just say that right now, this is holding up nicely, it's trying to push higher, but this also depends on the unemployment numbers. And unfortunately, I am not a fortune teller. I don't know what these unemployment numbers will look like. So the best thing I can really tell you is just to be open-minded for anything. The chart is bullish thus far. It has more potential to push higher, but this will depend on those numbers. I can't really say anything with too much certainty because it depends on them. But this chart is still very, very strong, and there is still potential for it to push higher. Now, I have something else to say about the QQQ. This will be worth your time. The QQQ, on the other hand, is showing some more weakness than SPY because when you look at this, we have a double top leg formation. We actually rejected off 446.7, like around that area. That's where the all-time high was. And then we got a rejection again, forming kind of like a double top. Now, the question is this a double top, or is this going to develop into like a cup and handle? Those are the two possibilities on the QQQ you need to be watching for. Watch 443.5 and 442 as supports. Watch resistance at 446, 446.7. If we break that, 448 is coming. And I'm going to be watching for these two possibilities. Is this about to form kind of like a cup and handle where we come down a little bit and we get a nice bounce off 442 or so and continue to push our way up to break the all-time high? Or is this thing about to turn on a double bottom, like a double top, like formation, where we end up just dropping back down? Honestly, guys, I'm in the middle with this, but I do want to note that we have some very tough resistance that's slowing us down, and there could be a risk of this actually coming back down and making its way back down to 442. So I do see a possibility of 442 being retested. There is a good chance it does come down a little bit, but we'll see if this leads to a cup and handle or not. So please be very, very careful. For another stock out there, we have Tesla. Now, Tesla was trying to break out today, but it actually failed to break 180. But it's showing a little bit of life. I'm seeing some life on this chart. And here's the reason why. This is forming a possible inverse head and shoulders like structure where this is like the left shoulder, this is the head. We could come down a little bit tomorrow to form our right shoulder, then eventually bounce. But we have to try to break past 180 to get that break. If we break 180, I think we're going to push easily towards 182.5, if not 184. If we fail to break 180 and come back down, watch 175 as critical support. Even though it depends on the data, I can't truly predict this with high certainty. It looks to me like Tesla might come down tomorrow, grab liquidity at 175 to 173.5, then bounce, and this looks like an inverse head and shoulder, so it might drop a little bit, then try to get a technical bounce to push back up to like 184. That's what I'm seeing on the chart as a real possibility, but just to be safe, we'll see if that ends up being the case. If Tesla gets that break of 180, that's how we could get to these high levels. That's going to be a level worth watching. So I think it's going to drop a little bit, then try to rebound, and we'll see if it could break 180. If it does break this, we could push higher. If it fails again like it did today, then it is what it is. It tried, but it ended up failing. For Nvda, the thing about Nvda is this thing is an absolute powerhouse. It's just continuing to soar with no stop in sight. It's absolutely insane. So, it broke past 925 for now, and we're actually way higher in the after hours. If we end up coming down, you're going to be watching supports close to 935, 930, 928, and then 920 above that, or below that, excuse me. Watch 920 as resistance. If we break this, there's 944 coming, 950, then 952 plus. In my opinion, the chart is very, very bullish, very, very strong. Might retrace a little bit, then continue to push higher. There is definitely potential for Nvidia to push higher. The chart is still bullish, in my opinion. It still looks very strong, so it could push to 950 plus and eventually 952. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of that, and that's what I'm seeing for the time being. For Aapl, in my opinion, is not looking that great. Aapl was trying to bounce again, and it just ended up failing. It's on a downtrend. Look at the last 4 or 5 days. It's just been dropping and dropping and dropping, closing red after red after red. Watch 169 as resistance, 170, then 170.9. Watch support at 168. If we lose that, there's 167.5, then 166 coming. In my opinion, the chart looks kind of weak. It may pop a little bit to the upside, get back to about this 170 area, then reject, and make its way back down towards these lower levels down here. So look for a little pop and then a drop back down. There is a risk of this continuing to sink. Aapl looks very, very weak. It's still going to be affected by the data for tomorrow, of course, but then nonetheless, the chart is just not looking good whatsoever. Now, let's talk about a couple more tickers before I concluded this video. How are things looking for the overall market? I just want to note that I'm going to just talk about the technicals because I can't truly predict the unemployment data, so I can't make any promises. But I do want to note that Rivian is showing a lot of life. We have a nice bullish crossover on the PPO, and we're trying to go for this imbalance over here. If we keep pushing, 14 could be on the table. So I do see upside potential in Rivian, especially because they unveiled a new product, which is really, really good. They had the new R2 coming out. We have this big gap to fill, so if we break past 13, we could easily fill this gap and get all the way up to like 15. But for now, we're going to be watching 14 first. So watch 12.87 if that breaks. Our next target is going to be up to 14, and if that breaks, we have a gap to fill. So I'm seeing some potential and life in Rivian. For SoFi, in my opinion, is looking a little bit weak on the daily, but it managed to hold up on the 4 hours. So it's trying to push a little bit. I could see some potential for this to get up to about 7.65. Again, it depends on the unemployment data, but I do see potential in the chart for this to come up a little bit higher based off technicals alone. For ARM, this thing got a nice little bounce. If this thing tries to continue pushing, we could actually make our way back up to about 143 and eventually a little bit higher than that. So I'm seeing some live and some potential for this to push a bit higher. For Super Micro, we're looking bullish. This looks bullish so far, hitting our target of 1200. Yesterday, I did mention it might cool off a little bit. It did cool off just a bit, but then got a nice bounce intraday. And the market ended up, holding up a bit better than expected because the market is just so bullish approaching Joe Biden's speech. And that was an external factor. So with that happening, we're going to be watching to see how well we hold around this 1200 area. If we continue to break out, I wouldn't be surprised if we go all the way up to 1250. If we come back down, watch 1157 as support. And if we lose that, 1092 could be coming next. But it does look bullish to me. It might push a little bit higher. For Palantir, in my opinion, is looking pretty decent. Now, it has the support at 25.62 and 24.8. Might come down just a little bit, but I do believe it could bounce after that. I do see a little bit more downside potential coming. It might come down to 25 and then bounce. So watch it come down just a little bit, then try to bounce after that. For the IWM Russell 2000, this, in my opinion, is still showing some life. It's very stationary, though, despite that. It might come down just a little bit. So we could retest 206.5, and come back up. But overall, I do see some life in the chart. For Microsoft, this is looking kind of bullish to me, especially considering we have this 410 resistance. If we break past 410, I do think it's going to go up to 414. So watch for that very carefully. If we break 410, 414 is coming. I think there's a good chance it may attempt to do so. For AMD, it's very, very sideways. It might just continue to consolidate tomorrow. I'm going to be looking for a test of 206.5 then back up into sideways price action. Very, very boring stuff. For the VIX is just trading sideways as well. We have this gap to fill, so I do think the VIX is going to get a break soon. The VIX might just continue to trade sideways depending on what SPY does, but eventually I do see SPY dragging this basically up a little bit later on, which does suggest the market may get a sell-off soon. I think the market's going to sell off soon, but we're not ready yet. The market may pop one more time before the sell-off comes, so we'll just have to wait for some time. The dollar also came down a little bit more. It's still looking kind of bearish as the market's looking bullish. No sign of this thing bouncing yet. So as this thing is remaining bearish, this is actually helping the market push higher. So we'll see what happens with the dollar moving forward. On the daily time frame, we're approaching this support, which is where this thing bounced off of 102 point. It's 102.7, and we'll see how it goes. If this thing continues to sink below that, we do have 102 coming, then 100.6 is next. But that's where it bounced last time, and I do think it's going to bounce eventually at one of these levels. But we're not quite there yet. There is still some more room for this to fall, in my opinion. Coinbase was bullish as predicted, but it's losing some momentum. I think that Coinbase is going to see some consolidation tomorrow. Might pop to about 245, come back down, just trade a little bit sideways depending on the unemployment data, but it looks very sideways. Google came all the way down to about 130 to 131. Now it's trying to rebound a little bit. If we could try to hold above 134, we're going to be looking for a push of 137. In my opinion, is trying to kind of like uptrend a little bit, might come down a little bit more than try to push a little higher. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. And finally, for Amazon, in my opinion, is going to likely test 175.5 and try to bounce off that. I do see potential in that to happen, but look for a little bit of a drop. It's going to drop a little bit most likely to at least 175.5, if not a little bit lower, and then we'll see if it rebounds. I do think that's going to be the move that's coming. For Meta's holding up quite well. We have a nice little breakout attempt. If we could try to get back above 514, a bigger push could be coming to 519. We have to try to hold our resistance. If we end up losing 508, a bigger drop is coming. So watch to see if we get that bounce. And that's going to be very, very important. Anyways, guys, that is it for the video. So I would love to see the market push higher, but this will depend on many different factors. Some stocks look like they're going to dip a little bit, such as like Amazon and the others. Other stocks look like they're holding up very well, like Rivian. But for SPY and the QQQ, the biggest factor affecting them is going to be, first off, Joe Biden's speech will affect us to some extent, so we'll see what he ends up saying. And finally, the biggest factor for tomorrow is going to be the unemployment numbers. We have a bunch of them coming out, so we'll see what this data causes. I just kind of broke down what technicals are showing us. So take some of what I've said with a grain of salt. Don't solely depend on that because the unemployment numbers will matter a lot more. But I wanted to be doing my best to kind of give you guys an idea of levels to watch for and kind of show you how things are looking. So that being said, thank you for listening. We'll see what happens with the unemployment numbers. I'll be back tomorrow to give you guys more of a report. Take care, guys. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys tomorrow again. Thank you. The market to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright despite these fluctuations, despite the way the market's looking right now. I'm still a very, very big bull for many stocks like Tesla, many stocks like Aapl. But things like this happen. There's always going to be bad news that comes out. So don't let this get the best of you and just keep the fundamentals in your brain because the market still has great stocks out there which have so much potential despite them being down. All right. So have a great day. Have a good night, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Get ready for Joe Biden's speech and take care. Thank you for listening again and peace out.